students. My name is Deb, and I'm going to be working with you for a few days on some nature journaling projects, and I am really excited about it. Our first project today is about birds, and so something that you see a lot at spring, something that you're going to see a lot of in nature right now, and we have a fun bird project today, and we have another one later this week, so I hope you like birds. For today, the thing I want to talk about at the very beginning is that I heard that some of you want to be artists when you grow up, and you have talked to your teacher about that. I am an artist and a writer, and the way that I use that in my job is that I work in marketing. And when you work in marketing, that's a type of job where you help companies talk about themselves to their customers and people who they want to be their customers. And so you help them describe themselves and you help them show off what they do. And you try to do that in a way that makes their customers interested in them. And so art is really important in marketing, and design is really important in marketing. And I work with designers almost every day. One of the things that I use when I work with designers is a design brief. They're sometimes called a creative brief. And it's really just a set of instructions that helps them work on a project for a business. And so today I am going to give you this set of instructions. It's a design brief about an imaginary business that I made up called Bolder Birds T-shirts. And in this project, we are going to imagine that Bolder Birds T-shirts has asked you to design a t-shirt for their spring collection. And so you are the designer here, and you get to come up with a collage that they are going to put on one of their new t-shirts. And so something that I want you to think about while you work on this is what you love when you see a t-shirt that you like, and what makes you look at it, what makes you want to wear it. I'm going to show you a couple of these designs that we'll be working on with our t-shirts. And you can see they're not very big, and t-shirts aren't that big. So you want to think about adding elements like photographs and colors to these birds that you can still see from a distance and still see how interesting they are, but that are also interesting up close. If we were designing something like a billboard, then we would want to think about everything on our project being big. If we were designing art for an app on a phone, everything would need to be really tiny. So for a t-shirt, we need something that looks cool from far away, but also keeps our interest up close and makes us want to wear it. The t-shirt that our imaginary client, Bolder Birds, is asking us to make is one that helps their customers get excited about spring birds in Boulder. Now, Boulder has some really interesting birds at spring because of migration. So migration, you might have heard of that before. It's when birds go on journeys, oftentimes with a flock, which is just a group of birds, to build their nests and to lay their eggs, raise their families. And we have a lot of interesting birds in Boulder at this time of year that travel here just to do that. And if you step outside, if you spend some time in nature, you will definitely see some. So these t-shirts are going to help Bolder Birds customers get excited about spring and bird migration. You can see an example of one of these t-shirts and how it might look in real life. And then we can look at our mood board. Now, a mood board is something that we use when we are working on a new design, and it's a collection of images and words and colors that helps capture a feeling and a look that we want in our design. Some things that we might want in this design are spring flowers that are in bloom, a bird's nest, leaves in the rain. Those are things that we don't have to have, but things that we can have, just images that remind us of spring. Another important thing to think about in a design brief is the color palette. So we want colors that make us think of spring. So if you stand outside on a beautiful spring day, where there are flowers and trees and leaves and butterflies and birds and a big blue sky. What are some of the colors that you see around you? Those are the types of colors we want to include in our collage. And so some of the goals of our collage are to show off the colors of spring. We want to show images that make customers think of spring. So those images might be flowers or leaves or blue skies, storms, baseball, baby animals, or any other special things that you see at this time of year. And also, we want to show off some of the things that you like to find in nature, or some of the reasons that you like to go outside. So this is personal and includes some of your personality in it. There's also a list of words. So if you encounter words in this project that you haven't heard before, hopefully you can find their meaning on this list and go over that with your teacher. And the next step, we'll begin finding our photographs to add to our collage. I hope you enjoy. So I want to go over your materials before we get started, and I am going to start with the bird silhouettes. Now, I made these silhouettes by using photographs of birds, and I put those in Procreate, and I traced them over the outlines, and I changed them a little bit from how they looked in real life, and that's something that designers do when they're trying to work on a project. I smoothed out some of the lines so that they would be a little bit easier to cut, and would also help if we were making a t-shirt to have interesting lines. And so some of these little edges you see with feathers were not there in the photographs, but I added those for a little bit of interest and to make it where we didn't just have a completely smooth bird shape, but in other parts where maybe there were some little lumps or bumps on how the bird looked in real life, I did smooth those out a bit. So you can see like around the tail, we've got nice smooth lines here. And those were just some decisions that I made as a designer about how I wanted these to look. Those are things you can do if you are working on your own design project. Everything doesn't have to look exactly like real life. It can look in the way that you think it will be interesting for the project that you're working on. I did the same thing with the robin. You can see here some parts are smooth and some parts have some extra lines on them, just to add a little bit of fun for our customers. So we also have our collage elements, and yours might be some paper in different colors, some magazine pages, and just things to help us with that spring inspiration. I'm going to go through these in the next video on how to help you pick out some of your collage elements. We have a glue stick to help glue our photographs onto our birds, and I also will have a pair of scissors so that we can cut out our collage elements, and we will get started. Okay, for your collage elements, so you might have paper in different colors, you might have some painted paper, you might have photographs. We are going to think about that design brief and the things that we were supposed to look for. I'm going to pull that back up so that you can take a look at that. I'm sure you'll have it in front of you as well. So we want to think about images that make you think of spring. So flowers, leaves, blue skies, all the things that you might see at this time of year, and some things that you like to find in nature, and some reasons you like to go outside, and also the colors of spring. So I pulled some magazine pages that have those types of things in them, and I also want to remember the size of my bird and what's going to fit on it. I'm going to work on the robin, and so I have things like this waterfall. I thought maybe I can cut out a piece of this waterfall and put it on the bird, and that might look really interesting. I have this lake. I went through a travel magazine and tore out a lot of photos, and so most of these come from the same magazine. You'll see similar pictures in each of them, but I really liked the lake and the water here. I like to spend time on the water in the spring. I thought these flowers were beautiful, and yellow and green both make me think of spring. I loved these trees, these light green leaves. Oftentimes in the spring, if you look around, you'll see small leaves on the trees that are really pale green, and that's what they look like when they first come out of their little buds. When the sun shines on them, you get this beautiful light that looks almost like lime green, and that makes me think of spring. So I definitely want to include it on my bird. I saw this beautiful picture of sky and clouds. I thought that could be fun. These ferns are really pretty, and that could be really interesting because it almost looks like feathers, and I could put that on part of my bird. It makes me think of feathers, and it's something green in nature. Now, here's some eggs. I know that we do think of eggs in the spring sometimes with all of the birds' nests, but really I liked this for the color. So no one even has to know this is from an egg. I might just cut out some of this yellow and put it on my bird somewhere. Could put it even in the beak area if I wanted to do something that looked a little like a beak, or just on a part of the bird that might need some fun colors. Now I definitely think of berries for the spring, and these also had such beautiful vibrant colors that I wanted to include those. I also like this blue background, and I might cut out some of that as well. Got more leaves and more blue sky that I might use. Some beautiful flowers. I definitely want to include a lot of flowers on my bird. I thought this flower was very pretty, and it has this bright, vibrant pink and that lime green, both things that really make me think of spring. I loved this rose, and I loved the water. And so when I think of what makes me excited to get outside at this time of year and what makes me love nature, being around the water and being around flowers are definitely really big parts of that. And so those are some things that I want to include on my bird. I can't wait to see what you include on yours. In the next step, we'll start cutting these out. So now we are to one of the really fun parts. We are going to cut out our collage elements. I think I am going to use all photographs, but you may have some different elements that you want to include, like some painted paper or some construction paper. I'm going to use some of the background colors from my magazine pages to add some color to my bird. So I'm just gonna bring this bird back over, and I can look at some of my pictures beside it and see where I might want them to go and how much space they might take up. And I will show you another interesting part of the design process, which is figuring out what won't work, because I was really excited, if you remember, about this picture with this beautiful yellow flower. But when I got my scissors out and thought about cutting it out and trying to cut around all of these lines, and then I also looked at it compared to my bird, it's so big compared to the size of the bird that I think it's just not going to work. Now, I do like some of the green on this background. I love the word garden, and I would love to include that on my bird, but I think when I put that word on top of my bird here, it's too long. It's gonna take almost the whole bird. So I'm just gonna use some of the green in this one, and I'll start cutting. Maybe I'll just have a nice little rectangle of this green that when I get to a point in my design that I need some extra color, I can cut this out into whatever shape that I need. But I'm gonna hold off on these flowers. Now these leaves are pretty. I may come back and use them, but I'm setting it to the side for now. Now this flower is much easier to cut out, so I will choose this flower instead of those tricky yellow ones. And I'm going to start cutting. I will give you some time to cut out your collage elements, and I will see you again when we start to put these all together. So to assemble our collage, what I did is I was cutting out my pictures, and you can see I didn't use every picture that I liked. It's hard to narrow it down, but I started realizing as I put them together, I had so much green, you couldn't really see all of the elements beside each other. I wanted a little bit of contrast between the different pieces. I wanted to make sure that I could see this whole line of the water and the trees. And I also thought about some things that were kind of fun, like I felt like this fern, I was able to cut it and it looks a little bit like a big feather. And I'm using these spring trees as they kind of go out, and in this line it reminds me of the bird's tail. And just in case you didn't realize this yet, I have got the bird under here and I laid out all of these elements on top of it. So let's do this together. Now that you've seen how it looks in the end, I'm just going to show you how you might do this yourself. So before you start gluing things down, you can just practice laying them out. You can even trim some of your paper edges so that they make nice lines, almost like a feather might if you want to. I did that a little bit here. And just think about where your different elements of the collage are going to go. You'll see that when I rearrange this, it's not going to look exactly the same when I had it all laid out the first time, but I'm just going to practice laying these out. See, if I put my fern on top of that rose, I don't like how much it covers it all up. So I want the fern on top of the lake picture, but under the flowers. And I like that look better. But I want these flowers under the fern so that I can kind of pretend that my fern is a big feather. And gotta find a place to put my strawberry. Now, does my strawberry show up very well against this red rose? Now, I kind of like how these elements have all of these pinks and reds in the middle. And those are my nice warm colors. And then some cooler colors like green and blue on the outside. That's not how I had it laid out at first. And I was a little worried about having this red strawberry and red rose right beside each other. It might make them get lost a little bit, and you wouldn't be able to tell which was which. But once I laid them like that, I kind of like it. So this is what you're going to do with your collage as well. Just lay your elements on top of one another. I know you can't see the bird through it, but we don't have to have it perfect. We just want it to generally work in the way that you want it to for your creative vision and to tell the story that you want to tell. Mine is kind of telling a story about a beautiful spring day on the lake, walking in the woods, eating some delicious strawberries, and seeing these beautiful flowers, these pops of colors as I go outside. So the next thing that we want to do is glue. And we want to make sure that all of our collage elements actually go over the edges of this bird because we're going to cut it out. And we want to make sure everything is completely covered when we cut it out. I'm going to use some of this white paper here as a surface to apply my glue because we're going to cut it off anyhow. It doesn't really matter. You may have a different surface that you're using, but I'm just going to use my white paper here. You can see I'm making a little bit of a mess, but art can be messy. That's one of the reasons why it's fun. I'm just going to get this nice and covered in glue. Glue it to my fingers at first, apparently. And then we'll lay this down. Try to get that about right. What we're going to do when we're finished this is cover a lot of this back over in glue so that everything's nice and sticky and we can get all of our elements stuck to it and that they're not pulling up when we try to cut it out. But since that's our first piece, we don't have to worry about that quite yet. Now I'm going to add my little dogwood flower here. I think I want it to lay like that. So I'll come and add a little more glue to it. And it is tricky because they get stuck to the paper a little bit, but you can just be gentle with it and pull it back up. And I'm just going to keep gluing these together. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the edges to make sure that even on the top, these are nice and stuck. That's going to dry, and I just want to make sure that when I cut it out, nothing is peeling up. And I'm gonna add this one. Gonna cover up part of this with my rose and stick another flower up under it. But I'm going to keep working on putting this together, and I'll see you when I am finished with this, and then we'll start cutting out our bird. Okay, so there is a bird under here, believe it or not, and I added all of my elements together. You can see this is not exactly how I had planned when I was talking through it. Some of that is because I kept changing my mind as I put it together, which is just part of the artistic process. Some of that is because I accidentally glued down a couple of pieces before I put the piece under it that I wanted to, and that is also part of the artistic process. Making mistakes and figuring out how to fix them is part of what makes art really interesting. It's creative problem solving. And so we want to not be perfectionists about this. We want to tap into our creative problem solving and use those things we might call mistakes. Just see them as opportunities to make our design more interesting or to think about it a little bit differently. And with something like collage, if you put something down and don't like it, you can always glue something else on top of it. So it's a really, really great kind of project to explore and to just keep growing your creativity, because there's so much room to grow and adapt and change it as you work on it. So I have everything glued down here and it's nice and stuck. And so all of my edges, I'm testing it. None of my edges are sticking up. If they were, that might create a little bit of a problem as I cut it out, but it's all good. And I've cut some glue here. It will dry clear, but I'm also cutting this part off so it doesn't matter. I am now going to flip this over. I'm going to put some paper underneath it. Maybe I'll use one of my other bird patterns because it still has some wet glue on it. And then I am just going to start cutting from the reverse side. And so that's all I have to do is cut from this reverse side, and I'm going to cut through that whole collage. And I'll keep trimming this and then see you on the next chapter. And we will get to flip it over for a final reveal to see what our birds look like. I'm excited about it. So I have now finished cutting my bird out. You can see how it's completely cut out now. And I cut on the side where I can see the black, and then we are going to flip it over and look at our final design. So I really love all of these elements of spring. It makes me happy just looking at it. I did have to add a feather here because I accidentally cut it off when I was cutting. And so if you make any mistakes while you're cutting, that's okay. We can fix it later. Again, collage is very forgiving. You can even add pieces if you accidentally cut off kind of a large part. And so I just think that this bird will hopefully make people happy when they see it on the imaginary Boulder Birds t-shirts. I can imagine seeing this and getting really excited for spring break and vacation and hiking and time at the lake. I can't wait to see what you make with yours. I am really excited to see what you love at spring and what kind of colors make you think of the season and what you put on your bird and what you'd like to see on this imaginary t-shirt design. I hope that you enjoyed this project, and we'll see you again tomorrow.